Hello, and welcome to Castle of Horror, the show dedicated to horror movies and awesomeness. This week we have a second special Halloween episode, a discussion of the 1953 film War of the Worlds. Bear in mind, if you haven't seen today's movie, we're going to be talking about it from the perspective of horror fans who have seen it, so warning, spoilers ahead. From Denver, Colorado, I'm your host, Jason Henderson, author of the upcoming Young Captain Nemo series from Fievel & Friends Macmillan Books. With me from Austin is Tony Savaggio, tech director at Rooster Teeth, lead singer and bassist of the band Deserts of Mars, and lead guitarist of the band Rise from Fire. Say hello, Tony.
Howdy.
Howdy! And also from Austin is Mr. Drew Edwards, writer of the long-running indie comic Halloween Man, and out now from Comixology and Sugar Skull Media, the all-new two-issue miniseries Halloween Man, Hallowed Tide. Say hello, Drew.
Hello.
Hello, and welcome back. And finally, also in Denver, as always, color commentary from attorney Julia Guzman of Guzman Immigration of Denver.
It's never going to get old, is it?
Say hello, Julia.
Hola, ¿qué tal? ¿Cómo
Hola,
están?
¿qué tal? Okay.
Nice.
All right. The War of the Worlds, also known in promotional material as H.G. Wells' War of the Worlds, is a 1953 Technicolor sci-fi film drawn from Paramount Pictures, produced by George Powell, directed by Byron Hoskin, and starring Gene Barry and Anne Robinson. It is based on the novel by H.G. Wells. It is the first film adaptation of this book, and it is set in contemporary times of 1953 in Southern California instead of Victorian England like the book was. It won an Academy Award for Best Visual Effects. It influenced a lot of movies. It was placed in 2011 into the United States National Film Registry in the Library of Congress, being deemed culturally, historically, or aesthetically significant. I'm super excited. This is a really good film for Halloween because, of course, the radio show is always associated with Halloween. So I think it's a wonderful time to talk about the film, since that's what we do. So why don't we go, Drew, Tony, Julia, and I'll go. So Drew, what are your opening thoughts on the War of the Worlds?
I really, this is a film I really like a lot. And when it was brought up doing this to pay homage to not only H.G. Wells, but of course Orson Welles and his infamous radio show version, I there was an enthusiastic yes from me. Normally when we do a vintage film like this, I like to do a lot of research so I can have a little bit more to talk about. Was not able to do that this week, alas, because I was so busy with Halloween Man stuff. And I apologize for that. So I'm just going to kind of give you what I think about this movie on a critical and emotional level, in which I will say I think this is a fabulous movie. It is a lot darker than I think most people would expect from a 1950s sci-fi movie. It is very beautiful, like the Technicolor is beautiful, and I think the special effects are still really neat. Like they don't look modern, and I think that if that's not something you're going to be able to wrap your head around, that's going to be a problem for you. But for me, I really love the look of the spaceships in this movie. I love this movie. I was really excited to get to talk about it, and I think this is a great Halloween movie. So that's where I'm going to leave you for now.
That's wonderful. Tony, what were your first thoughts on War of the Worlds?
I really enjoy this movie. I think it's another one I watched with my grandfather on a monster theater type of lazy Saturday afternoon. When I first saw it, it still holds up. It's got a lot of great stuff. The sound effects too are so iconic. You can't, in my mind, when you say War of the Worlds, you also hear the heat rays,
Yes.
heat ray sounds, the exploratory sounds when the things are searching, and also the sounds that the spaceships make when they're kind of hovering and moving around. Those sound effects are shorthand for so much sci-fi and have been cribbed and changed and, mocked, mimicked throughout film history that, there's a whole thing just on the sound design. But yeah, I really, really dig this movie. It's, it's a classic for a reason.
Yeah, absolutely. I like what you said about the sound design. We'll talk about that a lot more. Julia, what are your thoughts?
Well, yeah, echoing what the guys have said, all the effects are just brilliant, and I'm a sucker for practical special effects, and so to me, just reading about how they did some of the sounds and how they did some of the visual effects.
Wait, Julia, we lost you.
It's really, they do an amazing job. I think it's a beautiful film. We took our younger daughter likes to go into the past. Like I think she's one that if we traveled into the past, she'd go, I'm just gonna stay. You guys can go back. Because she really loves everything about the past, and she loves radio shows. And so she said, she would love to be able to just kind of step into the past. And so we've taken her on a couple of different things to that end. One was Colonial Williamsburg, and the other was a play that was the radio show of War of the Worlds. And so you go in, and the theater is decked out in like, I guess it'd be 40s or 50, whatever, early 50s kind of look. And then you've got these four people who just come in, and they work together at the radio station or whatever, like one of them on location, whatever. But they're just behind these podiums, and they have these microphones, and then one girl has all the sound effect props, and they just did the whole thing. Like they're just talking to people, like, what are you seeing? And it was really great. It's such a neat thing. So I'm really excited about watching the film again, because we watched a little bit of it just to get ready for that. And then we saw the play, and we've listened to the radio show, and it's such a neat. I watched the modern movie more recently, and it's such a great, not just film, but phenomenon.
Yeah, that's and I just want to echo something that Tony said, which is this was a movie that I glommed onto early, as a kid. It played on TV, and I videotaped it, and I watched it many, many times. This is sort of one of my go-to movies, and watching it again now, I can see why. There is it is dark and very it's really scary in some places. Not like the scares of the monsters jumping out, but the scares of like society falling apart. But there's just so much great stuff here. In a way, it is a film that has all of the 1950s belief that men and that men and women, I suppose, that Americans and people of the 1950s carry with them the wherewithal to overcome anything, and that the most important person in the world, the literal superhero to whom both clergy and generals will turn with open questions and let him into any meeting, is an American scientist. That this is like this movie and a few others just really capture that belief at that time, at least expressed in the.
Except I feel
Yeah.
that this subverts that.
Well, then let's get into that a little bit. I think that sounds really good. Well, we may as well start there. Our main character is Dr. Clayton Forrester, played by which is the name used by Trace Ballou in Mystery Science Theater 3000, but it is Dr. Clayton Forrester, the hunky 33-year-old Gene Barry, as a scientist, unknown exact atomic scientist. I'm sorry, we do know he is an atomic scientist. He's out camping with other scientists, and so he's the
So
guy.
just to get this straight, Florence Henderson is sexy and Dr. Clayton Forrester is hunky. Okay, just
It is.
clarifying that is.
Would you?
Or
would
are
you,
they interchangeable?
would you agree with me that Gene Barry is hunky in this movie? I think it's fair to say that's
He that's the name of Dr. Clayton Forrester. I missed
yeah.
the actor's name.
Yes,
Okay.
Gene Barry.
He is what Alec Baldwin is making fun of when he does his "I'm a handsome actor" thing on Saturday Night Live. You know, remember when he first started, when Alec
Yes.
Baldwin was around the first few years, he would just do that thing where he whipped his head around, took off his glasses, and said, "I'm a handsome actor." That is this guy. He kept doing that, kept dramatically taking off his glasses, and I was just like, "Oh my gosh, that's where Alec Baldwin got it." That's so funny. Yes.
Yeah. There's this moment, in fact, where he meets the girl who is also a professor, Anne Robinson. She's a professor at the University of I can't remember what university she is, but she's in California also. And whereas he's from so-called Pacific Tech, and she says, "Oh, I'm looking for the," she meets him and she says, "Oh, I didn't recognize you with the glasses because he's wearing these glasses. He's been camping." And he goes, "Oh, they're for seeing far away. I take them off if I really want to look at something." And he takes them off.
Look at something up close.
Just to
Yeah,
sort of reveal himself as Gene Barry. It is
like
really
Superman.
it is super funny. Yeah. There's yeah, I think it's funny how this is that worship of scientists. Now, Drew, talk to me about subversion.
Well, okay, so basically every authority figure, save one, and I will get to that at the end of my thought, um, is shown to be completely useless in confronting the Martians. You have the clergy,
Yeah.
who, well intended, very well intended, tries to make peace with the Martians and gets vaporized. You
Yeah.
have the military, who throw everything they can, and God bless them, they're going to keep trying, but they even drop a nuke on the Martians at one point and it does nothing. We are hopelessly outclassed by these invaders' weapons. There's no way we can compete with them. The scientists, by the end of the movie, are, for all their knowledge, are basically reduced to being bystanders.
Yeah.
They aren't the ones that come up with the solution. And in fact, there is no solution to these Martians except that they are defeated by germs,
Yeah.
or if you want to read in between the lines, maybe God.
Yeah.
And that, and to which I will say, maybe is the only authority figure that this movie acknowledges as having any power over anything. But I
Yeah.
actually find this to be a surprisingly cynical movie for its time period. Like if you look at other, like, as you say, if you watch, we did them over the
Yeah.
summer, the nothing, them would never play out like the way War of the Worlds did, because War of the Worlds, there has to be a certain acknowledgement that at some point you're helpless.
Mhm.
And that's what makes this movie kind of scary. And it's not, we only see a Martian outside of the ship once. And even then it's not a very good look. So, this isn't like a monster movie like that. What is terrifying about these creatures is their technology, and the fact that we are like children with
Yeah.
sticks compared to their technology. And I find that fascinating, considering when this movie came out.
So let's put a cap on that for just a moment, because I do want to return to that ending again, and we can talk about what all of that means. But because yes, but I want to go through some of the plot before we get there, because I think you might be onto something, and I hadn't really thought of it a great deal. That gets super duper scary. In the beginning of this movie is really just all about how highly functioning American society, and maybe it is part of the cynicism, but the beginning of this movie is all about showing us just how awesome Americans are to one another, basically, because you've got a small town. Everybody's at the movies. They're watching some big Cecil B. DeMille movie, and a meteor comes down, and so the cops go, let's go get those scientists who are camping nearby, and they go and haul them out, and everybody wants to see it. And so Gene Barry meets this other scientist who's there, and he casually mentions that he can afford to stick around because he's got his own plane and he can take it. And
But you'll note that the scientists were not in any hurry to get to the meteor. They saw it go down. They're like, no, didn't really look like a meteor, but they're still just camping.
they're fishing. They're fishing, boy.
They're fishing.
Yeah.
They're like, we're not going to get up for this.
There's and when they finally get out there, it's still super hot. And Gene Barry goes, I want to study this, but it's gonna take a while to cool down, so I'm gonna go to town. And here's what I love. I loved this as a kid. I love it now. He goes to town. He puts on a suit so that he can go out to dinner at the town hall and dance the square dance because that's what's going on. This is a neat universe that we're describing here,
It's also a
because
universe where they put out fires by hitting them with their jackets and squirting them with
well, that's a
little
super good point.
water
That's
bottles. I was like, I'm so glad I live in a time with fire trucks that can actually, dump
well, I mean,
large amounts of water and
think,
chemicals.
no, you're exactly right. I mean, so think about that. You got a small town, not unlike the town that the kids were living in the Blob, and if you're a stranger in town and so you go to a little hotel, if it's today in 2018, what do? Maybe you go down to the hotel bar and you order a burger and some fries and you take it up to your stupid room and you watch whatever happens to be on, and then in misery you go to sleep. But in what this is saying to me is, in the 50s, before the internet and television, you would go downstairs and go to the square dance. You would join the community. You would make yourselves a part of them, and you would be accepted with open arms because you're an American and they're Americans. And that's so
But
this
you
to
have to
me
be
is,
white. You have to be white.
it does appear that it would help to be white. We don't know. There is nobody who is non-white here except for the
That's
one Mexican
that's
guy.
my that's my point.
um and
The one Mexican guy who gets fried, poor guy. I feel bad for him.
yes. And yes, but at least it's not his idea, okay? He's not.
He's like, this is super stupid.
Yeah, yeah. The so very quickly we move into the problem of the the meteor cools down and out of it pops a Martian heat gun that can kill people. And so very, very quickly they realize that thing's super dangerous and more of them are coming down. And this thing moves super fast because the immediately you have this business of the military in a dugout where the minister, as Drew mentioned him, is there. Gene Barry is there as a scientist, and they're trying to figure out what's going to happen. And it is their first inkling that the Martian machines, they realize these are invasion machines, um, are impenetrable because they have shields, which is awesome. I can't remember what they call them. They call them something like a
A blister, I think, or
an, yeah, an invisible blister or something. But
yeah.
anyway, it does, uh, and so when we get to Washington, the general says something like, "We lost 60% of our men and 80% of our aircraft that they threw at them," if I'm recalling correctly.
Yes.
So think about that. By the way, if we're meant to take this seriously at all, you're sitting in the audience, you're watching that, and you're going, "Well, that sounds pretty scary," because if we just threw out of every 10 guys we threw, 6 of them are now dead. I don't know how this is going to work out. And then very quickly, you have all of you're aware that the Martians are knocking out major cities. And so this is the scariest part. And Steven Spielberg sort of recreates it in his own very terrifying way in the new one. But Clayton and his buddies, these various professors from Pacific Tech, the imaginary Pacific Tech, go, all right, let's go to Pacific Tech, which is located in downtown Los Angeles, and get some material, and we'll go to the Rocky Mountains in our trucks, and we'll do some science there, and we'll figure out how to stop it. That's the plan. In other words, you imagine that that's what's going to happen in the second half of the middle of this movie, is we're going to find them in a bunker in the Rocky Mountains where they will figure out some science and figure out how to stop the Martians. And then it doesn't happen. Drew, you want to explain what actually happens with the big plan of let's take the trucks full of scientific equipment?
There is rioting, and Clayton gets separated when looters attack his car and his truck and steal all his scientific research. And he is left wandering the city, looking for this woman that he has become attached to throughout the film, and his other scientific colleagues. And he while the city of Los Angeles is basically being torched by the Martians around him, and it's actually really scary. And again, at the end of the movie, the Martians are defeated by germs. They're not defeated by anything. And I think if this were any other movie, any other story, it would have the Independence Day ending, where our military or our scientists come up with a solution where we're gonna take the fight back to the Martians, and
even
we're
if
gonna
it's with the bacteria, like even if they figure out, hey, the bacteria kills them, so we've got to figure out how to inject the bacteria to others.
It would have been human interference somehow, because we would have to regain our wounded pride as Americans or as humans or whatever. And this movie isn't interested in that, for, I guess that's in part because that's not what was interesting the Wells, but I love that about this movie. I love the fact that our hero is reduced to a bystander at the end of the film. I think that is fascinating.
Yeah, it's a call then back to faith in a sense, because if absolutely nothing but just randomness is what caused the onslaught to stop, then man shouldn't put too much faith in his own technology. That's the only real lesson that you could actually learn from it. Tony, um, uh, what did you? I mean, we've seen a lot of science fiction. I mean, what did you think of this vision of Los Angeles basically on fire and newspapers, blowing across the street and everything? It was.
I mean, if you're gonna update it, that's, I guess, the place to be. I guess other, Day of the Earth Stood Still, it kind of covered, Washington and
That's true.
The East Coast. So if you're gonna pull it to the West Coast, instead of London, like the original novel, I mean, it's it tracks pretty closely. It's a pretty good update for the time. In the novel, which is a little bit more dry in places, there's tons of people going, hey, so I was going to go to this place, but that place is torched.
Yeah.
Now this other place is also torched, and we heard reports that pretty much everywhere is torched, and they start a whole group of people just trying to glom together and find some sense of where to even go when aliens come, and they're just so vastly outnumber you, and their technology is so far beyond that you're just meat for the slaughter. So updating to LA works really well as far as a huge city, plus you can shoot around LA if you're with me, so it makes sense from a practical standpoint and from a let's update this in this way standpoint.
There's a beautiful bit of just screenplay business where, he goes searching all the churches for her, because he said that when she told a story about how when she got lost as a child, she went and stayed in a church until her uncle found her. So he knows from that story that he'll find her that way, and that enables him to sort of visit all these churches where people, in amongst all this destruction, are just sort of, I guess, waiting for destruction. And it's beautiful. It's a beautiful image. Beautiful. Having these all the people who are wounded and they're singing. A couple of the scientists are there, and they relate their story of what happened to them after they got separated. This also has this feeling of, uh, if you've seen a lot of footage, if you're an audience member in 1953 and you've seen a lot of footage of places that have been evacuated, and just sort of the hodgepodge and sort of panic and just weird disarray that happens where people will get separated and then hook back up again, in a week or a few days or years. Same sort of stuff, except for it's all been compacted down to just a couple days here, because the Martians have come in and taken over. There's one more segment I want to mention, which is in the middle, but before the return to the city. um, Gene Barry and Anne hang out in a farmhouse for a time. They have to hide there as they're just trying to sort of get away and get to safety. And so most of the tension of the middle of the movie is this very, very tight, little, small, just two characters in a house scene as they're trying not to get spotted by the Martians that are outside. And it's great. That's a wonderful sequence, which again got updated, but not by much, by Steven Spielberg in his version.
Such a stressful scene because the creatures have or the aliens have like these the ships have these almost like periscope head things that are on these
Yeah.
cables, and so they can get into small spaces, so they can like peek into the room that you're in, and they kind of come in and look around. And it's just really, really suspenseful and scary. And this is a good, I think, I don't know, Jason, if it's okay with you, but it's a good place, I think, to talk
Go
about some of
crazy.
the effects that we
Yeah,
were
all you
talking
want.
about, because that you're talking about the sound effects and the visual effects and how all that's done. And the sound effects were done, since it was for the heat ray, were created from 3 electric guitars played backward. The sound of the Martian screaming after Forrester hit it, that's that during that scene, was a mixture of a microphone scraping along dry ice and a woman's scream played backward. And the former set of sound effects became widely used. Yeah, that's what Tony was talking about. So this is all the IMDb stuff, but that's just, I think it's so cool how they come up with these ways to convey this stuff, and how to do like the sparks, or just welding sparks. And I don't know, I think it's fascinating how they're able to pull this stuff off with the technology they had available at the time.
The sound is mind-boggling, especially like whenever the Martians are getting super interested in maybe killing something in a minute here, all of a sudden it'll start going wow 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 wow, and it's just like holy crap, that is a frightening, it's just really frightening noises. I don't know. I was just really impressed with the design. Likewise, the ship design. The Martian ships are some of the coolest spaceships I've ever seen. They're very simple. This sort of, I don't even know how to describe it. They're just these sort of flying. They are shaped sort of like saucers, except for they're not saucers. In a way, they're very similar to an Air Force plane that we see actually deployed when the Americans uh, try as a last resort to try to nuke the Martian ships. They fly a flying wing. Well, the Martian ships in this look a lot like the flying wings. They are basically just a big wing and sort of globular in the center.
And
Um,
apparently, that flying wing is one of only 2 Northrop YB-49s, both of which crashed. So this was stock footage that they used after.
no kidding.
From that, yeah.
Well,
The
the spaceships to me, what's interesting about them is they're not exactly spaceships, because they come down in these meteorites,
Mm.
and then they sort of fly, but they do pay, and the Wells book, they're called tripods, and they're
Yeah.
on these three legs, and they do kind of pay a little bit of lip service to that, is that these ships are being propelled on like a hard light platform. There's like these three hard light legs that they're only visible some of the time, but occasionally, like, you'll see like the outline of these energy legs that are pushing these spaceships
That's right.
along, and it's super cool to me. First of all, the fact that they cared enough about, because this is updated, it's not an exact replica of the Wells novel, but the fact that they cared enough to have some sort of homage to the being tripods from the
Well,
book.
Yeah.
they couldn't figure out how to make it work to be tripods.
It's super cool looking. Like,
Mhm.
Yeah,
I love everything about them.
it is a totally different design. Spielberg, when he comes around again, will go ahead and make the tripods. In this case, they came up with this idea of these floating machines that are invisible tripods, which is pretty cool. And we also got to see Gene Barry be a goofy scientist, because he's looking at this thing that has already killed lots of people. He's looking through binoculars at it, and he goes, "Oh, it seems to have near invisible magnetic legs underneath that are keeping it aloft. This is amazing." And he just seems thrilled at how crazy and remarkable these Martian machines that are sure to doom humanity are. By the way, there's a little bit of history dropped for Gene Barry's character, for Clayton Forrester. The general, claps him on the back or whatever and says, "I ain't seen you since Oak Ridge," or something. Oak Ridge is one of the Manhattan Project locations. So this guy is one of the guys who worked on the atomic bomb, which I don't know. I don't even know what quite to make of that, except for that it would mean that
Interesting.
he's one of the best of the best. Um, and clearly, like one of his co-scientists has a German accent. I think we are to take her as one of the Jewish scientists who fled to the United States uh, before the war and became part of the Manhattan Projects and so forth.
I love having a female scientist. I thought that was great.
For sure. Yeah, no, she's great. Um, so yes. Uh, what should we go to next? Is there anything else that we should mention about the War of the Worlds that we haven't talked about here?
I I think you talked about the sort of idealism of
Yeah.
the opening sequence. Like, I think it's interesting that this is a mostly white bread community,
Yeah.
but they do have one Latino character, and for the time period, and considering this is supposed to be in California, I I I I don't know why, but I feel like that was kind of cool,
Yeah. I mean,
and
California
realistic
would.
and
Yeah.
realistic.
Yeah.
Because everything else about this community is extremely white bread. To put it best.
I'm wondering, now that I think about it, is it cynical, or is it? There is a cynicism to it, but it's more like, I don't think for a moment. Here's what's interesting. You're not supposed to think, boy, how useless is Gene Barry, or how useless is the clergy. I think it's more than that, because when you look at it, everybody performs to their utmost best. The supposed evacuation of Los Angeles is fantastic. And actually, the only part where Americans let you down in behaving in ways that they shouldn't is when the mob goes crazy towards the end. All the trucks are gone and people are still stuck in the town and they start fighting over the trucks. And that's when you lose faith in Americans. But Gene Barry is doing his best, and the clergy are doing their best.
Well, I think
So,
I think that that's what makes it frightening is that
yes,
everybody they're really trying.
right.
Like these people are really trying and they're just outclassed.
They're out, right.
But I
That's
also
precisely it.
that's what but that's also what makes this movie kind of strange because it's got this like sort of darkness about it, but there's this underlying, especially at the end, religiosity about
Yeah.
it with all the praying and everything. And they don't outright say that. Well, they kind of do, but they don't really say that God stepped in and sent the common cold to kill off the Martians.
No, if
But
he did it like as eons ago.
yeah,
But yeah. Well,
it's
remember,
it,
God helps those who help themselves. So to some extent, it's like everybody did their moral duty to work as hard as they could, and in the end, they got lucky that God rewarded them with survival. That is the best I could put it. Um, it's yeah. I'm it is cynical, and yet actually I'm not sure it's cynical, or rather it's more like a very 1950s view of morality, that you will try to be righteous, and then if you're lucky, God will help you out. You know, that's 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 sort of it. Because I don't think you could ever draw the conclusion that Gene Barry shouldn't try to be righteous. That you know that doesn't compute. You really do want everybody to continue to do their role after this, because they're going to have to rebuild all that stuff. By
well,
the way,
the funny
Uh,
thing is I think the way it's sounding when we're discussing this movie is that it's tonally all over the place, and it's really not.
right?
Like this is a well acted, well scripted, well made movie on the behalf of everybody involved. It's just both the same and different from everything else of the same genre that was out at the time and kind of come out since then, because considering how many, again, I keep going back to Independence Day, which is
Yeah,
very much, we talked about Independence Day a lot when we did Earth versus the Flying Saucers. Well, this is another movie along those lines. And there's a lot like the scene where they drop the atomic bomb on the Martians and it doesn't really do much of anything. Like they basically recreate that in Independence Day, but that's a much
Mm-hmm.
less dark movie than this is. And it's there's 40 years apart from each other, 40-50 years apart from each other.
yeah, yeah. I think it's fair to say that there's a notion in this movie that man is not ultimately the author of his own fate. That is not the case in later films. Uh, it is more at home with the chaotic nature of the universe, which is interesting. That would suggest actually that we have matured backwards in the intervening years, and that, that we're less mature now than we were in the 50s.
Well,
Uh,
because of that religiosity that's in the movie, I think that there is this idea that you do have to kind of give yourself over to
yeah,
a higher power, that ultimately. And um I'm not completely, I have my religious beliefs, but I'm not, I don't go to church. But and yeah, I find that that's the juxtaposition, the sort of contradiction in this movie, is something that I greatly enjoy about it.
and I can appreciate faith in a film without particularly having an opinion about it one way or the other. It's not that's not important to me. It's not important to me that I share the beliefs of the characters. I am interested in what the movie thinks, you know, but it's not really necessary that I completely agree, or find myself on their side. I could be perfectly happy, for instance, watching a film. Well, in fact, I've watched some movies that were made in East Berlin, and they're all from an East German, perspective, and it's just fascinating to like plop yourself down into this totally different perspective and follow the characters along. So, anyway, all right. This is so wonderful. The other thing that I would want to say, and I'll just make this my final thought. This is a gorgeous movie. I mean, you really have to see just how beautiful the 1953 War of the Worlds is. Everything about it, certainly the music and the sound, but just visually, I think it's a beautiful movie to look at. And it's in a similar vein to what we said about the 1976 Paul Lynde Halloween special, this is another one that is just fun to look at. And I kind
You
of wish
cannot
that
put
movies.
this movie in the same category as the Paul Lynde Halloween special. That's just wrong
And
on
yet,
so many levels.
here we are.
I think no matter how heavy your nostalgia goggles are, Jason, I think we have to acknowledge that this film is superior entertainment.
Yeah, no. Of course it is. Of course, this is vastly superior entertainment. No, for sure. Yeah, I wasn't suggesting anything to the contrary at all. I'm just saying that one is fun to look at. This is gorgeous, and if you're gonna play that during their Halloween party, I think you could just as also play this during your Halloween party. But it's definitely going to get a lot more admiration.
A thing that is good and a thing that is crappy.
Yeah, well, I like the sets on the Paul Lynde show. I do. I thought they were pretty cool.
I have something else before we wrap this up, because I
Yeah.
know we're all getting punchy because we've been at this a while.
Yeah.
I am curious because we did a set of 50s sci-fi which involved some alien invasion movies,
Yeah.
and now we're doing this. And and Halloween is a time to talk about fear and stuff like that. So were we invaded by an alien race? Like, do you all think that we would persevere like in most films, or do you think it would play out more like this?
I think if they're traveling that far and have that technology, I think it's played out a lot more like this. Or one of my favorite adaptations, which it is also of a time, the War of the Worlds TV series, which was had a lot of cool stuff about, hey, what would the alien technology be like if it was resurrected?
And it's a direct sequel to this movie.
Yeah,
I mean, it's
Fox no less at the time, when Fox still would go off the air at night.
Yeah, that's right. That because they weren't like, hey, we're the book world. It was like, we are the world of the 1953 movie. That's true.
Yeah,
forgot about that. Yeah,
because there's a lot of interesting stuff in that on how we deal, even after, what would the aliens do if they could counteract this cold virus thing. I think we'd be kind of screwed. Hopefully we're viewed in a decent light, but I don't know, man. Lately I'm not so sure.
Fair enough.
I think I tend to agree. I think that you would just try to get whatever rations you could, and then you would try to approach your death, which is with as much dignity and preserving your children from as much pain as you could manage. But I don't think you're actually going to be getting out of it. So yeah, I think that you're looking at the Holocaust of humanity if you actually have an invasion of that kind. I think this is it. Yeah.
Damn. All right. I'm Debbie Downer. Jeez.
Hey,
we're doing a pretty fucking good job of it ourselves right now, though. So
that's
the aliens might come in.
May as well be for that.
Yeah, the aliens might come in and be like, "What? We
You
just have to
guys
wait
are
it out.
morons.
Yeah,
Yes, that was
wait it out.
Rod Serling's take on it. Was that the alien that was the hilarious thing that Rod Serling came up with, was that the aliens would be clever enough to realize we could destroy ourselves, that they didn't need to like take death rays all over all the cities and stuff. Um, and that was because, you want to talk cynical. Rod Serling was like, he was like Frank Gorshin from Star Trek. He had a cynical side and a sort of schmaltzy side, and they were at war with one another constantly. So yeah, uh, and that's War of the Worlds. Let's get our final thoughts. You already heard mine, which is that this thing is gorgeous to look at. But Drew, Tony, and Julia, Drew, what are your final thoughts on War of the Worlds?
What a fabulous way to cap off the Halloween season. I mean, I've had a lot of fun talking about in the Michael Myers movies that we've been doing, but my heart really beats for old school a lot of the time. So I just was excited to do this, and to do a double feature in one night, even though it was kind of an endurance test for us. And I hope our listeners take that into account when listening to these two episodes, and I hope they listen to them back to back as intended. Um,
Mm.
for what it's worth. I enjoyed this conversation. I love this movie, and I'm glad that we made a little time to do it.
Love it. That's fantastic. Tony, what are your final thoughts?
I mean, the movie itself is an all-time classic. Like I said at the intro, the design of the ships and the effects are amazing. The sound effects, I mean, you'll still hear those ripped off from time to time. Or the other thing, this movie has been on TVs in other movies
Mm.
so many times. Usually, you don't even have to see what's on the TV. You hear it. Oh, look, somebody's watching War of the Worlds in this movie that we're watching. Like, for whatever
Yeah.
reason, War of the Worlds is on, and I know because I hear these sounds.
I hadn't thought about it. That would
Make
be interesting to see a list of them. Like, where does War of the Worlds show up in the background of other movies?
it's in more than you think. I'm just I'm drawing a blank on exact movies.
No, I
I've
believe it. Yeah,
seen it,
yeah,
heard it. It's such shorthand for there's a sci-fi and or a horror movie. You'll see it a lot in horror movies where people are babysitting or go into a house and look, it is Halloween, therefore they are playing War of the Worlds.
yeah.
And it's just that iconic. It's I like the feel of, man, we are really messed. This is going to be hard if we encounter technology that's this advanced. We're not so sure we're going to make it out, but we're going to try because we have science, which again, I kind of long for the, hey, science helps era.
Yeah.
As opposed to, let's just not believe science because that's for people who are uppity and snooty and don't like, they want you to think the science things. Ugh.
Yeah, you're right. In this
That
one,
makes
there's
me
a class
sad.
system that everybody sort of admires, right? The scientists are in this sort of knight class that everybody's sort of down with. That's okay. They're knights. It's fine.
Yeah.
They,
Well,
yeah,
when things go awry, let's ask a scientist. I don't think that happens as much nowadays,
I'm
unfortunately.
kidding.
But that's where we're at.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's fantastic. It still holds up. It looks great on screen anytime it's on. Yeah, all-time classic.
Fantastic. Julia, what are your final thoughts?
Oh, I don't really have anything new to add. I mean, it's definitely a beautiful film. It's definitely a classic. I'm very pleased to have done it here, heading into Halloween week. So yeah, I'm really glad that we watched it.
Beautiful. So I won't add anything else. I am just thankful that we discussed it. So that's War of the Worlds. If you haven't seen it, you should go out and see it. I cannot imagine you actually listening to this first and then going out to see it, but I've learned that that is possible because some of our listeners actually do that. So cool. All right. I'd like to get your endorsements, and I assume that they will have some kind of a Halloween related edge to them since we are getting really, really close to the date, but it doesn't necessarily have to be so. So I think we went Drew, Tony, Julia, and then I'll go. Drew, what do you have for us this week?
Well, first off, double dose of self-serving endorsements. If you are in Austin or in the Austin area, on Halloween from 5 to 8, there is a Halloween Man celebration at Austin Books and Comics. I will be there signing comics. I also will have the creative team from the recent Bat City special will all be there selling comics, selling prints. There will be a costume contest. There will be candy. So we've been saying candy, costumes, and comics. Three great things that go great together. So that's Austin Books on Wednesday, the 31st. Also on Halloween on Comixology, the second issue of Halloween Man Hallowtide comes out, and I'm very, very, very proud of this comic book. So I really hope you check out both part 1 and part 2. You can look that up if you search Halloween Man on Comixology or Sugar Skull Media on Comixology. As far as I've actually had a crazy busy week, so I have not had much of a chance to get into too much of anything. I did watch the first two. This is how strange of a universe we're on. I watched the first 2 episodes of The Chilling Adventures of Sabrina, which is on Netflix, and it's a horror reimagining of Sabrina the Teenage Witch. And if you told me 2 years ago that you're gonna watch something that's based off Sabrina the Teenage Witch, I probably would have laughed at you. But I really enjoy it. It is an incredibly atmospheric show. I don't know where it's shot, but it looks like it's shot somewhere up in the Northeast somewhere because it looks a lot like where all the area around where Jamie actually grew up in the Hudson Valley. I don't know if that's where they shoot it, but it's beautiful to look at. It's incredibly gothic and atmospheric. So I'm digging it. I haven't finished it, but like the first 2 episodes I did enjoy. So I'm giving it a tentative thumbs up, but I also want to add an amendum. Netflix has been killing it almost too well with all the Halloween programming because they, outside of The Haunting of Hill House, the Chilling Adventures of Sabrina, Curious Creations of Christine McConnell, and a new season of Castlevania. Like they've literally put up more Halloween tie-in than I can actually humanly watch. So both good on you, Netflix, but also slow your roll, Netflix. I want to be able to watch all this stuff.
Beautiful. Tony, what about you? What do you have to endorse for us this week?
I'm going to start with War of the Worlds TV show, even though parts of it are severely dated, and the second season kind of went off the rails in a lot of ways. But as a tie-in to
Can you
this,
get it? Can you find it anywhere?
I think it's on DVD.
Wow.
I don't think it's remastered for Blu-ray because it just wasn't popular. But yeah, I'm pretty sure Amazon has it, which I need to pick it up.
Just interrupting you. Yeah, go ahead. All right, continue.
self-serving wise, I'm going to follow Drew. So on Tuesday at Beerland, Rise from Fire is playing. If you're in Austin and you want to go straight from Devil's Night, which is Tuesday, into Halloween, we play at 9. If you want to come, there's going to be costumes. We're playing with our friends Flooded Tomb. We've been friends with their bassist for years and years and years, and this is the first time we've gotten to play with them. The lineup overall is super fantastic, and it's Rain and I's 18th anniversary on Monday.
Happy anniversary!
So come to the costume anniversary rock show if you're in Austin and want to come check out Rise from Fire. Other than that, I've just been still playing games. The first episode of one of the shows that I work on, Ruby, came out this weekend for first members of Rooster Teeth, and it'll be on the Rooster Teeth website. So that's one of the shows that I keep things going on. And it's been getting good response. So that's super cool. Other than that, just keep on keeping on and, have a good Halloween. This is our season, I think, for the podcast, but also, it's not Christmas or whatever, but all of the weirdos and cool people that I know tend to think of Halloween as their season like that. It's similar. So let's all be weird together and be cool about that, and, have fun and don't be jerks.
Oh, that's a lovely thought. Julia, what about you? Do you have anything to endorse?
Well, you know what? I'd like to actually have the closing thoughts because I have some things I want to say. So why don't you, if you have an endorsement, endorsement, go for it.
I only want to endorse actually two things really quickly. One is we saw the Enigma. If you remember the Enigma, he is still around. This is the guy who is big on body modifications, and he's got, puzzle pieces.
He used to live here.
Yeah, he did. He used to live in Austin.
He actually has been in my apartment.
No kidding.
Well, we saw him at the Six Flags here, the Elitch Gardens is called, performing his show.
Amazing performer, very, very wild. We were very close up. You just gather around, so we were like super close.
Too close.
Amazing. The just the astonishing feats of I don't know, enigmatic body tricks that the Enigma can do.
So he's come to the store that my wife used to work at. There was a music store called Alpha Music.
Mm-hmm, yeah.
And his whole shtick is speaking in riddles, which makes it really hard when you're trying to help somebody find music. And so eventually they had to go, look, I know this is your thing and I think it's cool, but can you just drop that and tell us what music you want?
That's super funny.
But, I get it. And they were trying to be cool until it was just like, we have a lot of customers. You really just need to tell me what you want.
Okay. But here's the thing. I was astonished watching him here in Denver, and he's performing all through the Halloween season. I don't know when the last day is, but my point is, go out to Elitch's and catch the Enigma several shows a night. If you want to see a man actually drive a spike into his own skull and then pull it back out again with a wrench as he's making jokes, and that's not the scariest thing that he does. It is amazing stuff. I mean, it is really, really amazing. He does things with chainsaws that I don't recommend anybody try. I was astonished. It was a really good experience. So that, and also, by the way, Christine McConnell on Netflix is mind-blowing. I didn't know that thing existed, and then I watched all of them. They're very short. There's only like 6 episodes. They're like 25 or 30 minutes each, and it's delightful. It's like the best of the Muppets. It was a really good show. So that's my other endorsement. All right, Joya, go ahead.
Yes. Well, so this has been a really difficult week. 11 people were killed for being Jewish, 2 people were killed for being black, a bunch of people were sent bombs for their political opinions, for being Democrats, and I just wanted to read a couple of quotes and encourage everyone to not only to be kind and loving toward each other, but also to take action. Because the first quote is from the Talmud, and it's, "Do not be daunted by the enormity of the world's grief. Do justly now, love mercy now, walk humbly now. You are not obligated to complete the work, but neither are you free to abandon it." And the second one is from Desmond Tutu, which is that if you are neutral in situations of injustice, you have chosen the side of the oppressor. If an elephant has its foot on the tail of a mouse and you say that you are neutral, the mouse will not appreciate your neutrality. And I just want to, remind people not only to be kind to each other, but if you are choosing to say, I'm staying out of politics, or I'm just going to take care of my family, and but not get involved with anything else, or I don't want to vote because it's just the midterms, those are positions of privilege, and people who are being targeted and hurt, they need us all to stand up with them and for them. So please vote, and please speak out, and be kind to each other. And happy
That's good.
Halloween.
Yes. Happy Halloween. Happy Halloween. My gosh, we won't
You
have
know-
another show until after Halloween. Go ahead, Drew.
Relating, because I think that what you just said is wonderful, Julia. I always notice when we have a Halloween on an election year, the reverence, like the excitement for Halloween is almost elevated, and I think it's because people need escapism that much more, and mysticism that much more. And I definitely think, with this midterm, I've seen that, especially with all the insanity in the news. And my God, like, one of the guys that was killed by that shooter was a 97-year-old Holocaust survivor. So to go through, which is like the saddest thing I think I've ever heard.
I think
Like,
it was a
when I
woman,
heard-
actually. Yeah, it's a
Well,
woman.
that's still like that just when I somebody told me that
Rose Mallinger.
that's like to live through the Holocaust and then die as someone comes into a synagogue shouting all Jews must die. Like, I like, when I think about that, like, my hair on my whole body just stands on end. It just makes me feel horrible. And so, like, thank you for saying that, and thank you for your thoughts, and oddly appropriate, I think, ending a discussion of War of the Worlds to talk about the sort of War of the Worlds that we are now living in.
Yeah.
And
Yes.
God and the common cold cannot rescue us from this. We have to rescue each other. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
It's beautiful. All right, be excellent to each other. This is our favorite season, but it's not the end of our podcast season. We're still going to be sticking around until we take whatever holiday break it turns out to be. So I think we've already said that we're going to be coming back. If we come back next week or the week after, I don't know. But as soon as we come back, we will be back with Bela Lugosi Dracula and whatever goes with that. So I cannot wait. I am so thankful for everybody. If you enjoyed what you heard tonight, or you have things that you would like to talk to us about, come to the Facebook page, let us know, tell your friends, subscribe, leave reviews, all those things that you've heard 1,000 times before. They're now true just as much as before. So thank you. And everybody, I appreciate you being on. Talk to you soon.
Good night.
Good night.
No.
Good night.
Happy Halloween.
Happy Halloween.